The identity of the woman whose body was found along with that of slain IEBC ICT manager Chris Msando has been revealed.
Carol Wairimu Ngumbu, a 21-year-old nursing student, is said to have been the unfortunate victim of a murder case that has puzzled and shocked the country in equal measure.
Carol Mumbo, who was brutally murdered alongside IEBC ICT manager Chris Msando, died out of ligature strangulation. A somber quiet at the home of the now late Carol Wairimu Ngumbu. Visitors make their way past the Green Gate to condole the family that call this compound in Gaché home. The glare of the media and cameras proves too much for a family in mourning. The news of their daughter, sister, and friend, 21-year-old Carol, found dead at the city mortuary on Monday, was hardly what they expected.
The story begins not with a crime scene, but with a girl, young, wide-eyed, and gentle, with dreams too big for the small town of Gaché to contain. Her name was Maryanne Wairimu Ngumbu. To her friends, she was Carol, the one who laughed with her eyes, helped you with biology notes, and talked about graduating from Kenya Medical Training College like it was the beginning of a lifelong dream. But that dream would be silenced forever on the cold floor of Muguga Forest. What started as an ordinary Friday night for a 21-year-old student ended in a political crime scene that the nation still struggles to explain. Founded alongside one of Kenya's most crucial electoral offices, IEBC ICT manager Chris Msando, Maryanne's story was quickly swallowed up by politics, suspicions, and spin. But beneath all the headlines and hashtags was a daughter, a sister, a friend whose only mistake might have been being in the wrong car with the wrong man at the worst possible time. Dark Echoes 254.
Investigation Day 5 and Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Oduor was on the trail again after a 3-hour autopsy on the body of Maryanne Ngumbu, a 21-year-old college student whose body was discovered alongside that of IEBC ICT boss Chris Msando.
In the quiet, hilly town of Gaché, tucked in a leafy outskirt of Kiambu County, lived a girl named Maryanne Wairimu Ngumbu, fondly called Carol by her loved ones. Gaché was not a place that made headlines. It was the kind of neighborhood where families had known each other for generations, where the rhythm of life was simple. Early morning market runs, school bells, and the constant chatter of children playing in the dust. This was the world that shaped Maryanne, a world where dreams often clashed with reality, but where her family believed in something more for her. Maryanne was born on July 2nd, 1996 into a humble but tightly knit family. Her parents, Sarah and Charles Ngumbu, were ordinary Kenyans, people who didn't ask for much from life except a roof over their heads, food on the table, and a future for their children. Her father, a craftsman in the informal sector, worked tirelessly to provide for his daughters, taking loans and saving every coin to pay school fees. Her mother, a devoted homemaker, ran a strict but loving household. There was no wealth in the Ngumbu's family, but there was warmth and deep commitment to education. Maryanne was the second-born of at least 2 daughters. Her older sister, Jedida Wanjiku, was her closest friend and confidant. Together, they shared everything: school notes, inside jokes, and long conversations about their future. Jedida later recalled how Carol was the calm one, the peacemaker, and gentle voice when tempers flared at home. She was disciplined, playful, respectful, and mature beyond her years. From a young age, Maryanne showed a quiet brilliance. She excelled in school, not just academically, but in how she carried herself. Teachers adored her. Neighbors respected her. She didn't party. She wasn't rebellious. Even in her late teens, she remained grounded, focused, and deeply connected to her family. There were no scandals, no secrets, just a young woman who wanted to become a medical professional and who was steadily working her way there. What set Maryanne apart, her family said, was her resilience. There were times the family couldn't make ends meet, but she never complained. She studied hard, passed her exams, and secured a spot at the Kenya Medical Training College, the Karen campus. She moved to Nairobi for her studies but never abandoned home. Unlike many girls her age, she didn't keep an apartment in town. She always returned to Gachie after her clinical rotations and exams. Her roots were there, and so was her heart. In Maryanne's world, there was no bodyguard, no politics, and no power games. Just a promise made between a father and a daughter that education would open doors, that medicine would be her way out, that someday soon she would wear that white coat, not as a statistic, but as a success story from a forgotten corner of Kenya. Maryanne's academic path wasn't just a journey, it was her mission. From the moment she joined Kenya Medical Training College, she fully immersed herself in the rigorous demand of medical career. She chose to specialize in community health nursing, a field that required both emotional resilience and technical skill. To Maryanne, healing wasn't just about hospital, it was about dignity, empathy, and showing up for the forgotten. She wanted to serve in rural clinics, to be the bridge between overlooked communities and life-saving care. At KMTC, her instructor described her as focused and deeply methodical. She wasn't the loudest in the class, but she had an unshakable presence, always on time, always prepared, always asking questions that showed she was thinking beyond the syllabus. She never skipped her practicals, even when others did, and when it came to field work, especially during her attachment at Naivasha Sub-County Hospital, she shone brightest. Patients remembered her soft demeanor, how she explained procedures slowly and clearly, how she never made them feel just like another file. Maryanne had just completed her course requirements and was set to graduate in December 2017. Her next step was to apply for public service work, either through county governments or NGOs in rural Kenya. She dreamed of going back to Kiambu or even further, Turkana, Kwale, Marsabit, anywhere her skills were needed. But she also had plans to pursue further training in maternal health. Her ultimate vision was to become a midwife, not just delivering babies, but educating young mothers in preventive care. To her, nursing wasn't a fallback career, it was her calling. Maryanne Ngumbu wasn't just someone's daughter, she was the heartbeat of her home. In a modest house in Gachie where evenings were spent in the warmth of shared meals and whispered dreams, Maryanne had carved her place not with noise or rebellion, but with grace. A quiet pillar in a family that held itself together through faith, sacrifice, and an unspoken bond forged by hardship. To her mother Sarah, Maryanne was the child who never had to be asked twice. She rose early, cleaned up without being reminded, and always left a note if she would be home late. They weren't rich, but Sarah said she never once saw her daughter complain about not having something. She adjusted, she waited, she believed her time would come. She never demanded, she earned it. And that quiet dignity, her mother would later say, was what made her both strong and soft at the same time. Maryanne's bond with her sister Jedida Wanjiku was something more than sisterhood. It was soulmate energy. They did everything together. They laughed at private jokes, swapped shoes, and complained about boys in the kitchen while peeling vegetables. Jedida called her my shadow and said even though she was younger, Maryanne often acted like the older sibling, more thoughtful, more reserved, and more in control of her emotions. When Jedida's phone battery died the night of Maryanne's disappearance, she didn't worry. Carol always found her way home, always. To her father, Maryanne was the one who made all the sacrifices feel worthwhile. He wasn't a wealthy man, but he took out loans, chased jobs, and hustled endlessly to keep his daughters in school. Seeing Maryanne in her nursing uniform, even just during her clinical attachment, was a source of indescribable pride. "That's my daughter," he said with a quiet conviction. The kind of pride that made your voice crack. The kind of pride that no tragedy should ever be allowed to steal. But beyond the family cycle, Maryanne was deeply respected in her neighborhood. Neighbors described her as intelligent but gentle. She wasn't flashy, didn't dress provocatively, and never involved herself in unnecessary drama. She had no reputation to untangle, no whispers behind her back. She moved with care, almost like she knew she was carrying something sacred, her future. Even online, her digital footprint was minimal. Her Facebook profile featured only a handful of photos, modest, unfiltered, and mostly shared with friends from school. She wasn't chasing likes, she was chasing legacy. In every sense of the word, Maryanne was a natural, not just because of her chosen career, but because of who she was. She listened more than she spoke. She remembered small details. She believed in people. She wanted to heal the world, even if no one had ever taken the time to fully understand her own wounds. And that's the quiet tragedy. Because when she died, people talked about her like she was an accessory to someone else's story. But those who truly knew her knew better. She was the story.
When she did not return on Saturday, the family's efforts to find Carol ended at the city mortuary on Monday, where her lifeless body was found.
By the morning of Friday, July 28, 2017, Maryanne Ngumbu had no idea that she was stepping into the final hours of her life. To her family in Gachie, it began like any other day. She woke up early, as she often did, quietly preparing to travel into Nairobi. She had recently completed her course at the Kenya Medical Training College and was preparing for her graduation set for December. That Friday, she told her mother and sister that she had errands to run in the city. She wore her usual modest clothes, nothing loud, nothing suggestive. She carried her bag with a calm, slow movement that defined her. Her family noted nothing unusual, no tension, no signs of anxiety, no farewell disguised as small talk. She left Gachie by matatu, heading into Nairobi CBD, where she was to meet her older sister, Jedida. The two met in town and shared a meal at a small spot downtown. It was a regular routine. Two sisters catching up, laughing over chapati and tea, talking about upcoming plans. During that conversation, Maryanne mentioned that she would be meeting up with someone later that evening, a man named Msando. Jedida knew the name. Msando had appeared on TV recently as the acting ICT manager of Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, assuring the country that the electronic voting system for the upcoming August elections was secure. He was a public figure now. But to Maryanne, he wasn't just a government official. He was someone she had known for a few months, While the full extent of the relationship remains unclear, Jedediah said Maryanne spoke of him respectfully and without fear. As the day wore on, Maryanne and Jedediah parted ways around 3 p.m. Maryanne told her sister she would wait in town and that Msando would join her later. She also mentioned that one of Msando's colleagues would be accompanying her while she waited for him. That detail, subtle and seemingly innocent, would later add a layer of complexity to the timeline. Sometime between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., Maryanne and Msando were spotted together in Nairobi's Central Business District. CCTV footage placed them in and around city nightlife spots. One clip showed them walking together, relaxed and composed, no signs of distress. Another security camera recorded their vehicle exiting the CBD, heading towards Thika Road, Roysambu Kasarani area. Maryanne's phone went silent around midnight, July 29th. Her sister tried calling several times, but the calls went unanswered. The assumption initially was that her battery had died or that she had returned late and gone to bed. No panic, no alarms yet. Unknown to her family, that night, Chris Msando's vehicle, a silver Land Rover Discovery, was found abandoned in Roysambu off Thika Road. The driver's seat was pushed far back, the dashboard intact, but no signs of either Maryanne or Chris. It was the first real clue that something had gone wrong. The next morning, Saturday, July 29th, panic began to ripple. Msando's disappearance triggered immediate concern within political and media cycles. After all, he was a top election official, and the elections were barely 10 days away. News of his missing status flooded social media. State agencies, activists, and journalists began to ask questions. Meanwhile, in Gashie, the Ngumbu family still believed Maryanne would return that evening. It wasn't until Sunday, July 30th, that the truth surfaced. 2 bodies were discovered in Muguga Forest off the old Wayaki Way in Kikuyu, some 30 kilometers from where Msando's car had been abandoned. The first body, that of Chris Msando, bore clear signs of torture. His right arm broken, deep cuts across his back and hands, his face bloodied. He had been stripped of his underwear. Nearby, about 1 kilometer from where Msando's body lay, police found a second body, a young woman. She too was stripped to her underwear. Her hands showed signs of having been bound, and her neck bore deep ligature marks. The woman was Maryanne Ngumbu. Her family didn't receive a phone call from police. They learned of her death through news reports. Photos and headlines refer to her as an unidentified woman companion or Msando's female friend, as though she was a mysterious passenger instead of a daughter, a sister, a student whose family was now plunged into an unimaginable grief. When they called City Mortuary to confirm, authorities initially refused to let them view the body, stating that it was part of a sensitive state investigation. For days, her mother, sister, and father waited uncertain, heartbroken, and denied access to closure. These 48 hours between her last meal with her sister and her final breath in a dark forest remained a void in Kenya's collective conscience. The silence surrounding what happened between Roysambu and Muguga isn't just procedural. It feels deliberate, manufactured, controlled. Maryanne Ngumbu left Gashie a daughter, a future nurse, a dream in motion. She returned a ghost, and no one in power has ever told the truth about how or why. The news of Maryanne Wairimu Ngumbu's death did not reach her family through a knock on the door. There was no official call, no police liaison, no government representative sent to Gashie. Instead, her family, like the rest of the country, learned of a brutal murder from the evening news. Headlines blurred with urgency about the discovery of Chris Msando's tortured body, but Maryanne, she was an unidentified female companion reduced to a footnote in a political tragedy. Her photo, pulled from social media without consent, flashed across television screens before her mother had even been told her daughter was dead. Maryanne's mother. The shock was not just in the loss, it was in the callousness of it all. Her daughter's name was never mentioned. No one from the law enforcement reached out. There were no updates, no explanations, and when the family tried to view the body at the city mortuary, they were turned away. It was a government matter, they said. Even in death, Maryanne's dignity was handled like a state secret. Her father, a soft-spoken man who had built furniture with his bare hands to fund Maryanne's education, broke down. The girl he had labored for, the daughter whose graduation he had waited years to witness, was gone, just like that, and no one could explain why. For Jidaida Wanjiku, Maryanne's older sister, the pain was personal and haunting. She had eaten lunch with her sister just hours before she disappeared. They had laughed, shared food, made plans, and now, that last smile, that final voice note was all she had left. She said, Carol was my calm. She was the one who kept us steady. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She didn't deserve this. The funeral, held days later in Gachie, was a small and heartbreakingly silent. The media, which had plastered Maryanne's face across screens without context or compassion, was now asked to stay away. The family wanted peace. They wanted Maryanne to be remembered not as an accessory to someone else's story, but as a daughter, a student, a healer who never got her chance. But even in mourning, the family grief became political. While Chris Msando family received state visits, security protection, a government job for his widow, and national recognition, the Ngumbu's family was left with nothing. No psychological support, no financial aid, no follow-up from investigators. It's like she didn't matter, like she was just someone in the way. Years later, as the country commemorates Msando's death, Maryanne's name was rarely mentioned. Justice for her became an afterthought. Yet in Gachie, her room remains untouched. Her nursing shoes still lie neatly under her bed. Her ID card, slightly bent from use, is tucked into a photo frame on her father's desk. The world may have forgotten her, but her family hasn't. And their grief is more than sorrow. It's an indictment of a system that knows how to mourn men in power but forgets the women caught in their shadows.